Hello everyone, Harry Baldock here, editor at Total Telecom. In times like these, broadband access is more vital than ever, but rural communities around the world often find themselves underserved by both governments and service providers in their quest for affordable connectivity. Today, I'm joined by Sanjay Nayak, CEO and Managing Director of Tejas Networks, to discuss some of the challenges facing rural broadband deployment, as well as the role of new technologies in solving those issues. Sanjay, thank you very much for joining me.
It's a pleasure joining you, especially for this very important topic, given the situation in the world today. So I'm very happy to join today. Thank you.
Before we go any further, could you please tell us a little bit more about Tejas Networks?
So Tejas Networks, we are headquartered in Bangalore, India, which is the Silicon Valley of India. And what we do is building leading edge broadband access and optical transmission products, which basically means from the transmission side, we have packet transport, products based on MPLS. We have OTN technology. We have DWDM, and of course, the more important one in the context of today's conversation, we also have a very powerful portfolio of converged access products, which has all the interfaces for fiber to the home, which is on GPON, NGPON, both the OLT as well as the ONU side of things. And in the same platform, we can also do fixed wireless access on LTE for 4G or 5G. So that's kind of the products we have. We are, of course, very, very successful and a market leader in India, which is world's largest and one of the most competitive market in terms of how things are going. I'm sure you've heard about it. And all the major operators in India, whether it's a Reliance Jio or a Bharti Airtel or a Tata's, they are all our customers. Globally, we have done more than 500,000 of our equipment deployed in more than 75 countries. And one thing which differentiates us relative to our size of the company is that we've really deployed networks in scale, because everything that you do in India and many parts of the world that we operate are very large scale. So you're talking of hundreds of millions of subscribers and so on and so forth. And in 2017, by the way, we started this company in the year 2000. And in 2017, we were listed, we went public, and we did an IPO. And till date, I think we are the first deep tech company in India which went from a startup to an IPO. And the core of our company in terms of differentiation is our R&D. And we really believe that among all the listed companies in India, we are the top 3 in terms of percentage of our revenues that we spend in R&D. And from a product architecture, we have a very unique architecture, which we call the software-defined hardware architecture, where we have tremendous amounts of flexibility and programmability. So the same product can be upgraded with new protocols, new hardware cards, and really make it very future-proof and flexible for operators. So once they invest in our products or platform, they really kind of assured that for many, many years, they can continue to upgrade. And clearly, we are growing quite well in India and in the rest of the world. So that's kind of in a nutshell, giving you what Tejas Networks does.
Over the last year, COVID-19 has really shown that high-speed connectivity is vital for both urban and rural areas. What changes have you seen during this period, especially with respect to FTTX demand?
If you really see, no matter which part of the world you were in over the last 12 months, one thing which became absolutely clear is that a reliable, robust, high-capacity telecommunication infrastructure was really the lifeline which kept everybody going. And actually, whether it's a government or a private business, we all realize that broadband is now really a critical infrastructure, which we absolutely need to have. So what happened is that in many parts of the world, including India, a large part of the broadband infrastructure was built around wireless technology. So people had 4G networks primarily, which were used for providing broadband services, but that was on wireless. While 4G and broadband wireless is good, if you were not really such a high power user of bandwidth like we all became over the last 12 months. So essentially what happened was, and that in the urban areas, no matter which part of the world you were, there was pretty good connectivity, either in the form of a 4G infrastructure or to a limited extent, some kind of a wired infrastructure, whether it was in fiber or older infrastructure in the form of cable or copper. But the rural areas were really left out. And all the telcos pretty much focused on the, in the urban areas because those were the viable areas. And governments actually started doing connectivity in the rural areas using their universal service obligation funds. So what really happened in the last 12 months is that with work from home, learn from home, and every business from home and everything else, people really have increased the capacity or the demand for broadband by a factor of 10x in many cases, right? And as a result, in many parts of the world, including India and many emerging markets, and even from what I understand in Europe and US, a lot of the greenfield rollouts are all happening on fiber, because that's really the only way to scale up networks. And the thing I must tell you in terms of the kind of growth we are seeing in India, while there's a very good amount of broadband infrastructure in the form of mobile infrastructure, 4G, we still don't have 5G in India. But the wireline broadband infrastructure is very, very little. Less than 10 million subscribers is what we have in India, whereas it is clearly expected that in the next 24 to 36 months, we'll have more than 100 million broadband subscribers on fiber, which is a 10x demand increase in the next 2 to 3 years. And what I'm seeing in India, we see the same pattern in many parts of Asia, many parts of Africa, Latin America, rural US, parts of UK, where again the governments are building rural connectivity. So I think this is something which is a trend which will continue, and the whole philosophy of taking fiber if you can is really what is playing out, and Tejas is very well positioned to be able to address this growing demand.
What are the main challenges that governments and service providers face when it comes to effective rural broadband deployment?
Money, finding budgets for rolling out, high quality bandwidth services in the rural infrastructure, because in rural settings, you have a lot of spread of people, just on pure financial viability. Telco would not want to build an infrastructure there because it would make sense for him to pull fiber and go to get a few customers in remote locations. So clearly, I think budgets and cost of building such infrastructure is a challenge everywhere in the world. So in most countries, the governments have set aside funds like the Universal Service Obligation funds, which allows them to provide the viability gap funding for building such infrastructure. But in addition to the funding, the second part, which becomes very important, which we actually had a first-hand experience in India, was the lack of infrastructure and the high cost of operations and maintenance in maintaining these, first of all, to setting up these infrastructure in rural areas, and more importantly, once you set it up, maintaining it for future, because it's not a one-time activity. So really the O&M cost on an ongoing basis for a rural infrastructure, if they're not taken care of early on in terms of design of the infrastructure, can become a challenge. And those are the things which I would say would be the two top challenges that one would see from a government or a private rollout in the rural areas.
India has, of course, rolled out the world's largest greenfield rural broadband network, Bharatnet, which has already connected over 125,000 villages using around 250,000 kilometers of fiber. So it's really an enormous project. What role did Tejas Networks play in this project?
And we actually started working with the government right from the beginning when the project was conceived. And we really helped them plan and design the whole network in terms of whatever was the existing infrastructure available. Like I mentioned earlier, that the lack of infrastructure is a big challenge. So for instance, wherever the roads were there, they were used for doing the GIS mapping to figure out where fiber could be laid. Where the electricity lines were there, they were used for reusing the right-of-way on electricity cables. We had railways going across the countries. We have power lines. We have oil and gas lines going across. So basically, one of the innovations, one of the interesting things which we did was help plan the infrastructure in an extremely cost-effective manner. And I must tell you that the rollout cost of Bharatnet at the scale that you just described, which is connecting 125,000 villages, 250,000 kilometers of fiber, probably covering 200 million people, is the lowest in the world. It is probably an order of magnitude lower than what, for example, Australian NBN project costed, or what's the rural broadband in the UK or US is costing. It's at 1x or 1/10 of that cost. And there are many, many learnings that we get, which I'll talk about as well. But what Tejas did is from the beginning, in terms of conceiving the project, then of course, supplying the equipment. So we were the main suppliers, and more than 70% of the network which has been built on Tejas equipment. So we provided the FTTX equipment, both the ONUs as well as the OLTs for the GPON infrastructure. The transmission infrastructure to which this was connected to was already something that we had supplied before. So not only did we supply the equipment, but we were also we helped execute the project in terms of doing the installation, commissioning, turning it up, training the local people, and so on and so forth. And we are very proud to say that in this one of its kind project in the world, we were given the award by the government of India as the best performing vendor for timely execution, top quality project management, and of course, highly reliable and cost competitive equipment that we provided for the project.
You mentioned some key takeaways there. Can you tell us a bit more about the key learnings and innovations that came from your experience rolling out Bharatnet?
Actually, I would say a fantastic experience for us to learn, because the learnings from this project, now we are able to replicate it across many other countries as we go international and help do the same things. So the first challenge, I think, was of scale. In India, as I mentioned earlier, everything is about scale. So when you go across a country, on a national basis, you have scale in terms of capacity of the network, because so much of data is going to get pumped in. All government services are running on it. In fact, during the COVID period, entire India was connected, and there were many government programs in terms of helping poor people get money, get everything, which was all done electronically on this network, from health services to everything else. So I think this really had a lot of capacity challenges in terms of building a network for scale. Logistics challenges, because India is not an easy country. You've got mountains on one side, deserts, and areas that are hard to reach, and so on. Tough operating conditions, many places in India, and especially in rural India, and I'm sure it is also true for many other parts of the world. A lack of reliable power is a big issue. So we solved the problem by having a solar power backup in the ONUs that we did, so that it was a self-contained unit which could be made to work. A lack of skilled manpower. When you're deploying a network in such a large scale, you had to have a very robust equipment. You had to have a very low touch, almost automatic installation and commissioning, which could be idiot proof in terms of a very low level skilled person could put the whole installation kit on a backpack and on a motorcycle or a two-wheeler, go to a remote village far away from everywhere and install it. I think those are all things which we learned. And from a cost perspective, as I mentioned, India is a resource-starved country. I mean, and they were able to build such a large network. And by the way, this project of 125,000 villages will be scaled up to 650,000 villages over the next 3 years. So that it's still a long way to go. But what really worked is the right sized and right featured equipment. So it was not trying to build the latest and the greatest of everything in it. So you really needed to figure out what's the right kind of feature and capabilities that you need. And of course, the timelines were very challenging. It was all done within 2 years period. And from the government perspective, the way they planned it, they really used the existing assets of infrastructure in the form of whatever was available with the PTT, the power, rail, and oil companies, which I mentioned earlier. And then the other was mix and match of technologies. So primarily it was fiber, but whichever places were hard to reach, they had fixed wireless networks. And then, of course, in really remote areas, in the mountains in particular, they did use satellite connectivity as well. And the whole focus was on robustness, scalability, and self-sustainable thing, where the O&M problems could be solved by design. We did a lot of local level training. The guys who are using the network, something called common service centers, which is the last mile in the chain in the village who uses all these services. So we trained those people to really do the maintenance of the fiber and the equipment at the last mile. So I think there's a lot of innovation, both in terms of technology, architecture, as well as operation maintenance thing, which together allowed it to come up and come up at a really competitive cost and make it a very robust network.
Do you see a role for fixed wireless access to complement FTTX when it comes to rapidly expanding broadband access in uncovered areas?
Yeah, because especially as we saw with the experience of Bharatnet, it's not very easy to lay fiber quickly and reach all the places. It may not even be worthwhile doing it. So I think FWA technology on 4G and with 5G in particular will give you even better results. Is a very good way to fill up those gaps, if I were to call, right? So you should take fiber as much as you can, but there will still be pockets which you cannot. So FWA definitely is a good alternative for quick rollouts and also providing decent capacity, because there's no point providing suboptimal capacity, because bandwidth demand will only increase. And to this effect, actually, in Tejas, again, we have a very unique innovation in terms of a product that we have created, our TJ 1400, what we call is the ultra converged broadband access product. So in the same box, if you were to think of, you have FTTX capabilities, so you could do GPON and GPON, and you could also do throw in a LTE base station, which could do 4G and 5G, and all of it with a common management, common infrastructure, common power. So literally, the use case is very simple. A customer or who wants to deploy broadband in any area which is underserved puts one of our products over there. He starts off with a fixed wireless access on day zero, and you cover the entire vicinity right away. And then slowly and steadily, whichever places you think you can take fiber and make sense to take fiber, you start offering FTTX without disturbing the other customers. And then the FWA really ends up filling the pockets between. So I think this product has been very successful in India, in Southeast Asia, as well as in Africa, where there's a lot of greenfield rollouts which are needed, and people need to roll it out quickly. And there was no better way than to converge it onto a single platform, which is very unique because you don't usually find a wireline and a wireless product, working off the same chassis, to be honest. And that's something which we were able to do using our software-defined hardware architecture that I talked about earlier.
My final question is, how is Tejas Networks expanding globally, especially in the wake of the ongoing geopolitical tensions around the world?
Good point which you raised. If you really see what's happening in the world, and it's for everybody to see, the operators around the world, whether no matter which part of the world you live in, have clearly got a mandate from a business angle and variety of other angle, whether it's security or otherwise, to diversify their supply chain. It doesn't make sense for anybody to put all the eggs in one basket, to be fair. And and it's kind of also becoming more pervasive as 5G is coming, because with 5G you'll have even deeper penetration of networks in everything that we do in life, and that's why the security, for example, becomes extremely important. So when operators around the world are looking at diversifying their vendor base or a supplier base, Tejas actually is providing a very, very credible alternative, because we've built a strong reputation starting from India, which is a very, very tough market to succeed, where you have to have the absolutely latest technology, the highest quality, as well as competitive cost, because the cost of telecom services in India are by far the lowest in the world. And success in India's competitive market gives us a fantastic platform to be successful anywhere in the world, because a lot of the stuff that we do in India, given the amount of visibility the world has in India, in terms of large operators who've been doing massive scale rollouts, whether it's Reliance Jio or Bharatnet or others, and success here really means a lot for the rest of the world. So I think we are seeing a lot of good brand building internationally because of the kind of work we've been doing. The second factor, which is coming very interesting in our favor, as everybody in the world knows, that the network equipment is becoming more and more software dominated. So 20 years back, if you were to buy a telecom equipment or a networking equipment, a majority of the functionality or the differentiation came from hardware. Today, it's just the other way around. Probably 80% of what the secret sauce or the good stuff that you get in equipment compared to someone else comes from software. And software has been the DNA of Tejas from day zero. India, of course, everybody knows is a software powerhouse in terms of capabilities. So we are really leveraging the flexibility of software and the kind of complexities that we could do in software to really make our products very, very competitive. And then the last part, which is becoming equally important, is the trust factor. People do want to deploy a trusted telecom equipment, and which has to come from trusted sources. And especially post-COVID and 5G, when everything is getting connected, this has become an extremely important criteria for new vendor selection. And I think that's something which, again, Tejas and India has established a very good credibility, because India is, kind of the IT outsourcing of the world, and we have been doing trusted projects across the globe for many, many years. So we're really kind of making sure that all those good things of our strengths are amplified as we take our products worldwide. And what we are doing from a Tejas perspective is we have been making significant investment in international sales and support. So today, in different parts of Africa, Middle East, Southeast Asia, Latin America, US, Mexico, and very recently even Europe, we have our own sales team, own support team, both technical and pre-sales, post-sales, and we are seeing extremely strong customer traction. In fact, any country, any operator where we are able to get an initial entry. Over the years, we've been able to expand our market share and really introduce more and more products. So I really think, in summary, we are in excellent position to offer a new alternative to telcos who are looking as a new vendor who would take them to 5G and other, who want to really diversify from their existing base. And in summary, we kind of bring in the innovation of a Western world company and the cost competitiveness of an Eastern world company, all within a framework of a trusted partnership, which is what I think the world is looking at. So we're really excited about being able to expand globally and be a very prime supplier in many, many markets that we are going after.
Sanjay, it's been really fascinating talking to you. Thank you very much for your time today.
If you want to hear more from Tejas Networks, their CTO Kumar Sivarajan will be speaking on a panel session entitled Supercharging Your Fiber Network with Emerging Technologies at our upcoming virtual event, Gigabit Access. The session takes place on the opening day, April 20th at 12 UK time. Please visit the website for more details and to book your place today.